Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar this afternoon, which is going to be discussing quite a hot topic really of accredited versus unaccredited certification bodies. If you've not been to an NQA webinar before or you don't really know who we are, we're a global certification body and we are in the top 3 of the UK for 9001, 14, 45 and 27,001 also. I won't waste too much time boasting of our achievements. I'm sure if you're interested, when you get the slides, you can have a look through those. But if you are new and the standards that you're thinking of going for, then by all means get in touch with us and maybe speak with our training department as well about any certifications you're hoping to go for or that you might actually want some training for as well. So I'm Jude. It's a little bit out of date, this card, I'm afraid. I'm actually now the Technical and Projects Manager for NQA, and I've moved from the field to Risk and Regulatory, which is my new little home. Still do a little bit in the field though to keep the hand in, so I'm sure I'll see some of you throughout the year. But the following webinar is going to take about 40-45 minutes, and questions can go in the chat box. And we'll do those at the end if that's okay. And at the end as well, you will get a recording of the webinar, so you'll have all the slides and you can dwell, reflect, or have a look at a few of the services that we offer. So why has it been a hot topic for accredited versus unaccredited? Well, certainly pre-pandemic, there was quite a few clients and consultants that were asking lots of questions about certification bodies who aren't regulated. UCAS are regulated, and we'll talk a little bit about those later. So we felt it would be important to actually point out and understand the differences between accredited and unaccredited, and also discuss some of the benefits and the pitfalls of both and have a bit of a balanced discussion on that. So we all know cost of living is probably the topic of discussion in most households and most businesses at the moment. And we're all shopping about for different products, different services, trying to keep the costs down. And certification shopping is going to be slightly different for you. So whilst we might be looking for a cheaper alternative, perhaps, particularly with LearnPack, I believe that that's been a bit of a hot topic. £10 for a tub of butter, or exactly the same product for half price. Ingredients are the same, taste the same, spreads the same, sometimes better. You might not always find that that's going to be the case when looking for somebody to certify your management systems, whether it's quality, environment, health and safety, or information security. So if we talk about first what value you're going to get, and it will depend what you want from your certification body. So if it's a cost element that you're looking for, you might want to consider that yes, you can get a lower cost for a certification body, and you will get, no doubt, a certificate at the end of it. And we would hope that would give you an entrance into the market, and we would hope that the cost element, if you're looking at a cheaper version, might be, you know, a choice of fairness for you, perhaps. What a lot of people are looking for, though, is the complete experience with the body who are going to be coming into the business and looking at what you do and basically assessing whether you meet an international standard and whether you can have that certificate at all. So if we're looking at the cost, you might want to consider what process you're going to go through. When you initially approach a certification body, if we think about what your scope's going to be, what is going to go on that piece of paper? Because when you think about it as a tangible product that you will get at the end of an audit, it is really the certificate. And that's what you're going to be showing your customers, your suppliers, and what is within that scope is what you're certified to. So it's quite important at the beginning of that process to ensure that we know what you want from the certificate, and also that we can deliver that. There might be additional things that we can add in there that are of use to you. It's important that that certificate's trusted as well. That's probably the key thing and takeaway out of this entire webinar. And when we look at the fairness aspect of it in terms of your value, are your complaints going to be heard if you have any issues? Are your assessors going to be competent and monitored? And at the end of it, hopefully out of an audit, what we would really hope for is that we've all worked to create that result. So that result might not be that you get your certificate. It might be that what's been identified as more work is required. So the question popped up, so we'll get to that in a little bit, but great, we're getting interaction already. So I think the key thing is that you need to consider, as a business, considering certification, or if you're considering moving certification bodies, is that a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, you already became regulated as a business yourself. You might not realise it, but I'm just going to go through some significant elements which will have actually changed your business or will form part of your management system. And the first one I'm just going to touch on briefly is Donahue and Stevenson. 1932 this happened, so some of you may have had a business running at that time, some of you may not. And the neighbour principle was adopted into English and Scots law. And the idea behind it, you might recognise this from section 4 of 9001, is within the neighbour principle, considering the people who are going to be using our functions, who are going to be buying from us, and really putting in that consideration of meeting the needs of the people that we're working with. So it's not just an idea as such, it is now a legal tort and quite a famous case in contract law. So if you wanted to know more about it, then you can happily pop in that particular case and learn about somebody finding a snail in the bottom of their ginger beer and really working out that wasn't quite good. And as a result, it's a foundation now of every contract that you will make. Then came along the Sales of Goods Act in 1979. Now you really relate to this if you've got quality as a certificate, because this is your entire section 8. Is the description of what you're selling good enough? Is your product fit for purpose? Who's taken delivery? When's delivery accepted? So this is all stuff that's already being enforced in your day-to-day running of business. You don't have a choice. And this is a nice little case really where the person who was going against the business and trying to claim lost because they wanted to buy a nice little bit of art. They sent that expert in to see, is it worth £6,000 for this German impressionist piece? And the experts got it wrong and it was a fake, and in the end the business didn't have to honour that contract. So again, might be things that you recognise. The Employment Act, all of you have to follow this. All of you are subject to redress if you breach it. And we can see there that I've used the example of Vento. She went against the Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police and won £160,000 because of a discrimination. And then that leads us straight into the Equality Act, which was relatively new, I suppose, only 12 years ago. And we all love to see that the government can also be taken into account. And in this particular example, it was a case of the trade union said, if you have just been dismissed, you might not have £1,200 to take your employer to court. And of course, the government lost. So the reason I've given those examples, hopefully it will actually bring us into the space of why we get certificated. All of the key elements of the standards are aligned to what you already must do. So you are already regulated yourselves. And you might say, well, so what? That would be a reasonable question. We're not always going to agree with the rules. We're not always going to agree with the law, and we're certainly not always going to agree with regulators. But without being part of a regulated institution, we're not going to have a mechanism to address a business or a person who causes us or our business harm, whether it's a reality or a perception. We're not going to get our money back if we don't receive the product or the service that we've expected. We're not going to have a further avenue to explore if the business or the person is grievous. And without an impartial body to take the emotions out of the situation, and when you're looking at the money that you spend on certification bodies, it is a lot of money. We need somebody who is there who can look at what the issue is, what the rules around the issue are, how we need to apply that, and what the result of it should be. But you should expect exactly the same as all of those things from your certification body. So I mentioned that UCAS is our regulator, and I've taken this directly from their website. So they are appointed by the government to assess and accredit organisations that provide services including certification, testing, inspection and calibration. Excuse me. And the key thing there is that they've been appointed by the government. What we've just looked at is legislation made by the government. So we can't actually get too much higher than our government telling us what we have to do, how we have to behave, and what the penalties are for that if we don't behave in that key way. Other professions we might want to consider that same level of regulation are doctors. If you have an issue with your doctor, if you're unhappy about the way you or your loved one has been treated, you can go to the General Medical Council. You can do the same with solicitors to the Law Society. If you're unhappy about how a business operates, you can go to trading standards. And of course, you mentioned financial ombudsman to a bank. Whatever issue you're having is probably going to be resolved fairly quickly. So as a person, the most serious issues that you can maybe ever face have a regulated government-led oversight. And from a certification point of view, your business and having a valid certification is that most important issue to us. Again, you might think, so what? Because at the minute, what we're looking at from a commercial point of view, perhaps, is prices are hiking up. You know, where you're putting your money, your well-earned money, and that resource needs to be considered. And of course, if you can get a cheaper certification body, you're going to look about and you're going to think about it and think, well, you know, what does the UCAS tick mean? Nothing to me, so maybe I should go for a much cheaper one. So I just want to really talk a little bit about how that element works and what you get out of it. So this year alone, we have had, not totaling, we have had over 50 days of being auditing ourselves as a certification body by UCAS. That programme hasn't finished, and we've still got quite a few days left of that. If you average that out, that's over 1 a week for a year by the end of each 12 months. The processes that you get involved with, and not just NQA, but any certification body that has been accredited, are tested and assessed by experts in their own fields and standards. So whereas when we come into your business and maybe you've got 9001 and 45, or the 3, 9, 14 and 45, what we're solely asking you about and asking you to show us is what is within those 3 standards. Tell us what you do, and then show us what you do. We'll align it to the standard, and hopefully at the end of that, you'll get a certificate. It's slightly different for the certification bodies. So we are assessed to 17021-1, as well as our own processes, procedures, our policies, and then the core 3 standards, which our assessors will go out, and as well as aerospace, automotive, and the other standards that we run. So it's not just one audit It's every aspect of the business that we run that has to be looked at. They're also interested in how we look at complaints, how we allocate days. So we can't just think, well, okay, we've heard of this company that's applying for certification and we think they're really rich. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say 20 days a year because that's good for us. And we'll assign 5 assessors to have 20 days each. We can't do that because how you allocate days is regulated as well. And that's not just by UCAS, that's the International Accreditation Forum, and there are international documents which show us a calculation of how we do it. We get checked on that quite heavily. They're also interested in the use of the logo. So again, you get a certificate with any cert body, of course you do. But the key thing and the gold part of that is what that logo gives you, where you can trade with it and the value within it. And of course, from an assessor point of view, I can 100% tell you that UCAS are after competence, competence and more competence. And that's not just from the assessors who have to be able to do the job. So it'd be no good, for example, to say, I'm going to audit a company that deals with horticulture and I'm going to show my competence based on the fact that I mow my lawn and I grow my own veg and I built my shed last week. I can't do that. I have to be able to show external qualifications for it because they're verified. I have to be able to show that maybe I've had over 2 years work experience doing something and it can be verified by somebody that I've worked with. So everything internally looked at externally has had to be provided externally to some extent as well. So it's always somebody checking and checking and checking. And it's the same for our decision makers as well. So they don't have to have the same knowledge, a subject area, for example, as our assessors, but what they do have to have is the ability to go through potentially 100 audits that take place a day, extract the evidence, know what evidence they're looking for to be able to push back. When you think of it in that context, that's a massive feat for a small bunch of people who are very nichely skilled, and that's what UCAS are looking for. They're also looking for leadership because we have to be completely impartial. And the word impartiality sort of suggests, well, we won't have best friends within the industry and we won't go for a specific client base or what have you. But it's more than that. We have to be seen to be impartial and we have to provide evidence that we're impartial. So often that requires outside volunteers, perhaps having a committee, looking at what we do on a deep internal level. So on the face of it, from a client point of view, it might just be the case that we tip up in a nice car, you buy us a lovely lunch, we float about, having a look at your business, and then at the end of it, we float back out. To get to that smooth, hopefully calm and nice experience, that assessor has been through a lot for each audit just to get to that position. And that's not even including the internal audit programme, which isn't just NQA UK, that's all over the world. So our overseas agents, our other locations, America, Italy, Bulgaria, Spain. And I'm really sad that I've got the job, of course, of going to those places and spending some time meeting those that I'm not sad at all. It's the best job in the world, I'm convinced of it. But I'll stop boasting. It's not becoming, is it? So we'll come back to the logo anyway, because that is really a large part of what you are buying for an accredited, from an accredited certification body. So you might not realise it, but the NQA logo and the UCAS logo, particularly joined together, are subject to copyright. I monitor this personally, and I can tell you there are loads of people that apparently want to use our logo that have never had registration with us, that have probably never even had a quote from us, to be honest. And we find it on their websites, and we find it maybe on their vans and what have you, and not allowed to do it. So of course we take action, which we're allowed to, and we will take it to the extent that we can do within our power. Why do we do that? Well, you've paid for it. If you're a client, you've paid to have that use for it, you're allowed to. And what it does is it automatically tells your associates that your system, whatever that system may be, has been certified by a reputable and regulated government body. Key thing as well, I think, is it tells your customers that you've invested in certification. So we can all produce a certificate, and we can all say we're working to quality. We can all say that we're working to health and safety, because we have to, because we're regulated by the government to do that. That is the law. But just because we're compliant with the law, it doesn't mean we're particularly good at it. It doesn't mean we're particularly committed to it. It just means it's something that we have to do. So if you're showing suppliers and asking them to raise their standard, if you're showing your customers, yeah, we've got our certificate, we've paid for it, we've ensured that somebody who checks us gets checked themselves, it does show a higher commitment. And you probably get on tenders as well, or when you tender yourself, do you have certification to 9001? Do you, or are you working towards it? I think you probably find not only does it help you to get through quicker, a nice big long form, by having these standards and certificates, you'll also find that quite a few now ask, is it UCAS accredited? And that's a key thing, because UCAS is trusted, it's a government body or regulated by government. Another good thing for your clients is that they don't even have to speak to you. They can go straight onto the UCAS website and they can verify from that if your certificate's genuine. They can sit, excuse me one moment. They're able to see how many certificates you hold, and they are able to see that you're with the certification body that you say that you are. And that's good, it's due diligence on the part of your customers. Another good thing is that if you're unhappy with us or any other certification body that are accredited by them, you can make a complaint, and it doesn't have to be really to the certification body. You can go straight to UCAS. We spoke earlier before about if you've got a complaint about your doctor or about your solicitor, it becomes quite a long-winded process. Trading standards, if you want to complain about a certification body or even somebody holding this logo on the documentation, a roofer or I don't know, a supermarket that's got this, if you've got a complaint with them, you can go straight to UCAS and you can raise that, and they will come straight back to the certification body and demand that we deal with that within any power that we have and raise it directly with them. So it gives you a broader element of redress, which I think is quite important, because the quicker we deal with it, the less UCAS have to have contact with us in the nicest possible way. So it's an incentive for everybody to deal with any problems that you do have as quickly as possible and not let it drag on for months. It's also important to note that UCAS operates a memorandum of understanding, and it's the only internationally accredited certification available in the UK. So for that investment alone, in my eyes, it's probably worth it, because you can't take an unaccredited certificate in Europe, for example, and have confidence it won't be internationally recognised. This is the only tip and the only logo that you can use with confidence and make application abroad. So let's return to the idea of value. And if we say the £500 and less is likely to be unregulated, and the £500 above, I'm talking per audit, I suppose, really, it's likely to be regulated. I recognise that it's probably a good couple of £100 more than £500 a day. And let's see really what the benefits and the pitfalls are. If you want a certificate and that's all that you want, it's probably best not to waste your money on an accredited certification body, because it's likely that when they go in, they're going to make lots of findings that you probably won't want to address, and you've just wasted a lot of money. And you'll be invited probably for special, have to go back for special visits. So the one visit will probably turn into 1.5. You might need to then employ a consultant to come in and fix any problems. But if you literally just want that certificate, that might be the best option for you, to not look at accredited certification bodies. Your customers, however, may also take that view that that's what you're doing. And I'm not trying to do a sales pitch. Obviously, I work for an accredited certification body, so I'm going to be pro get the accredited one. But this is just the reality of what we live in. It's everybody's individual choice of what kind of body they go with. And because they're not doing anything wrong, nobody can stop them because businesses use them. But it's the pitfall is that for yourselves, you may not have that address. So they're not likely to be regulated. What you'll likely be presented with, and we know of businesses that do it, is if you call me up, I use the royal me, or I wouldn't do this, but if you call me up and say I need a certificate for 9001, I'll already have a generic template. I'll change your business name, I'll have a conversation with you, and I'll change a few words in my template, and whether you want it or not, you'll get a quality manual, you'll get a quality policy, you'll probably get some sort of internal audit structure, which I'll do for you. So I'll mark my own homework, I'll do that audit. How that will sit if I find findings with my own work is a little bit sketchy around, isn't it? Because surely you would then think, okay, I've spent 500 quid for you to write something to find problems with what you've done yourself. I'm not likely to get an assessor that has a particularly good knowledge base. If you think of the cost of fuel, if you think of the cost of even just basic accommodation, getting from A to B, what sort of assessor are you likely to get if, as a business, I have to employ somebody to take your company details, go through that performer or contract review process, hire an assessor to drive to you, because it's unlikely you'll be around the corner. So let's say it's an average of 80 to 120 miles on fuel prices. They might have a stopover, and then they've got to drive back home again, and then I've got to pay somebody else to review that report. Economically, that's just not viable. So you may find it's one person doing 2 jobs, and there's no break, there's not that impartiality. Whereas if you pay for the higher regulated, likely regulated one, what you'll find is that your assessor is totally forbidden to create your system, forbidden to have anything to do with helping your system out, other than offering opportunities for improvement. We are totally impartial, so we're not going to have any conflicts in raising findings. The biggest value our customers get from our visits are finding issues. So yes, we look for conformance, yes, we look for compliance, but when we find that there's an issue, we raise it with them, we tell them why it's an issue, and we explain it, hopefully in the context of their business and their industry, so that there's a good understanding without gobbledygook and I, so to speak. You're likely to have an assessor who's worked in your industry, who has experience in your industry, or has done some formal education surrounding the business models within that industry itself. And it is really, really difficult to get assessors with the level of knowledge required, because what you deserve is a good audit. What you deserve is a thorough audit That is what you're paying for. More importantly, they're held accountable. So if they raise 10 major non-conformances on your audit and you're not happy, they have to be able to explain that to a decision maker. They have to be able to explain those findings maybe to the management or the field director. And if you're really unhappy and we can't resolve it and you go to UCAS, they have to be able to explain it to UCAS as well and be able to justify those decisions. So there's always a port of call that you can go to. It is not the assessor's word, it's the law. And you might find in unregulated bodies that's not the case, because often the resolve is giving you money back, giving you a 3-day audit. That's the chances you take, really, I suppose, isn't it? But you've got more chance of getting that redress with somebody who's held accountable and a business that's held accountable, but you'll know yourself, than a business that isn't. And there's nobody really that can get involved other than trading standards. And you're looking at a very, very lengthy time for that to get resolved. So my final point for you really is that, are accredited certifications more costly? Yes, they are. Of course they are, because we have to pay a lot to hold that accreditation. And at the end of that payment, at the end of those round of audits, every single year, it's not a one-off. I think in our recertification year, we have a lot more than what we have in normal times. There's still no guarantee at the end of it we get our certificate. So it's in our interests to really work, not only to the standard 17021-1, to our own processes and procedure, and be the best that we can be. Because if we lose our accreditation, we lose our business, because our customers want that accreditation. They want that, if you like, safety net, that if there's a problem with us, they've got somebody to go to. They want that the updates that we get from the certificate, from UCAS, whether it's product updates, standard updates, that we can then pass that on to our customers. I'm not too sure, if you're not accredited, where you would get that information from, which is 100% valid, because we get it straight from the regulator. There's also a high resource for assessed skill based, and that is ostensibly one of the main factors of what you're paying for somebody to come in with fresh eyes into your business and know what you do from the off and how to bring that value to your business. There is no value in just receiving a certificate, in my personal opinion. So my question for you guys is, why would you choose to pay, to part with hard-earned cash for something that doesn't stand up to validation checking? There's not really a lot that you can do to verify these people's qualifications, to verify what the processes are, if they work, to go anywhere if it goes wrong, or in fact that the certificate will get you anywhere, whether it will break into a new market for you. You're also choosing something that possibly hasn't had the confidence to pay for its own validation. If you look at the body giving you the certificate like that, you have to consider how your customers would look at you. It's cheap, I think is probably one way of putting it. And it's like doing a 3-hour course online in psychology and saying you're a psychologist. You're not. You've done something quite small of quite a big process. The takeaway I'd like to give you is that regardless of whether you're certificated or not, you are already regulated. We are all regulated by somebody in some capacity, even if it is just the minimum of applying the law. But what I would like to leave you with is that you should really value your business and have a regulated certification body that will take your business as seriously as you do. I think I've got to try and sell you stuff now. So these are our training courses, which we've got running at the moment. Again, you're going to get these slides, and I'm not good on the sales bit, so I'll just say that we have got advanced training courses which are quite good. If there's any that you're interested, your email's up there, excuse me, website's up there. Get in touch with sales and see what's right for you. You can be advised and have a good discussion. Quite nice people. And if there's any questions, I can see if there's one, I'll take them now. Otherwise, thanks ever so much for joining me, and I hope it's cleared up a couple of questions. So one key element of having UCAS accredited certification is that UK Gov require national body accredited certificates to be used as evidence of compliance. Absolutely right, and I think that certainly echoes what we've spoken about there. Evidence is quite crucial. I told you you'd get the job. Thank you, Amanda. It was a pleasure working with you. Lovely. I don't think there's any more questions. If you do, then, and you don't want to chat about it in here, oh, hang on. Once accreditation is received, what is the frequency of coming back to the business to check on our standards? Okay, so if you're talking about the 14,045 standards, the way it works is that you would have a stage 1. And what that means is that we're assessing your readiness for that certification. So we don't want to just automatically come in, find a load of problems, and then say, no, you're not having the certificate. Stage 1 is to purely prepare. Have you got everything in place that you need to? In essence, it's a document check, and we'll probably like to have a look around your business. Following that, within 3 to 6 months, we would do a stage 2. That stage 2 is a full audit of your system, so it will be longer than the stage 1 generally, and we would dive into every element that you're looking for certification with your scope and also the mandatory aspects. If you're recommended for certification at that stage, we will come back to do a surveillance within 12 months, and then a second surveillance within 12 months after that. And then in your 3rd year, you will have a recertification audit, which is very similar to your stage 2. It's much more of a deep dive of your whole system. Your surveillance audits are a deep dive, breaking your system down. So if you did supply and distribution, for example, surveillance 1, we may heavily look into your supply aspect. Surveillance 2, we may look into your distribution. Right, okay. We plan to be ready on trial period by next April and apply for a visit by December. Excellent. Absolutely. So is that, I'm presuming it would be you're implementing the system as a trial for next April and then applying for certification by next December? That's brilliant. Get in touch with training, Andy, because I know that we've got a lot of e-learning for all the standards that would run that might be useful for you in terms of communicating to your staff about how the systems run, about how the audits run, and we'd be more than happy as well if you wanted a gap analysis, if you wanted an assessor to come in and tell you how close or how far you are, but definitely get in touch, and thank you for that comment. Do NQA intend to put their certifications on the IAF Cert Search database? Good question. And I'm going to have to come back to you on that one, Anthony. And I'll make a note to answer that question to everybody in there. There's a lot of change at the moment of where certificates are being stored and held, which is a little bit above where we sit. We were thinking of trying client portals. I'm not sure quite how far along we are with that, because it's all technology based, obviously. But I know UCAS have just started the same project with getting a similar vision, I think, to what you're talking about. Let me come back with a firm answer instead of making stuff up, because we'll just end up in a right tiz. Database. Good. So we'll get all of that responded to. How do you plan your surveillance audits out? Does a client have signed a 3-year plan post-certification, please? Yes, absolutely. So what should happen, and if it doesn't, we're all in trouble. At the end of each visit, you should get a plan. So your stage 1 should give you, on the last page of that report, should give you an idea of what activities are going to be looked at on the stage 2. I say idea because they won't have done a really thorough audit at that particular time. So it'll be a guide, really. Sort of on the day, you may spend longer somewhere than anticipated in a particular department. But once you've completed that stage 2 or your surveillance, at the back page of every single report, you should have the complete plan for your next visit and a 3-year plan on the next page from that. So it will tell you what activities are going to be looked at rather. You get the mandatory activities looked at every year. So management review, internal audits, your context, your leadership function, and corrective action sort of phase. We'll look at those every single year, but there will be a mix of your operational activities. Your auditor should also send you a plan 6 weeks before your visit. But if there's any problems or you can't find where that plan is on your report, get in touch and we'll do a little screen share and I can show you exactly where everything is for you. That's brilliant. That's what I'm here. Disappointed with our current CV shambolic approach to surveillance audits. I think, Mandy, you would not be on your own with that. We always want to improve though as well. So if we're, I'm hoping we won't be just as shambolic, but we do, as part of our internal audit approach, we do check the auditor's plans. We do check the auditor's reports that the clients are actually getting what they need to. And it's also a compliance with 17021 that you should be receiving a plan. And it's something that UCAS check as well. So if you want to chat further, please, by all means, get in touch and we'll get you sorted. So if there's only one question there that I don't think I've been able to answer, thank you ever so much for listening. And if you think of something after the webinar or you just want to chat through a couple of things, then please don't be a stranger, get in touch. And I will leave you to the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much for your time.